Hey everyone, Azile here, doing an Oxygen Not Included Spaced Out DLC video. I used to play this game quite a bit years ago and recently restarted now that it's a full release and with the full DLC. I just finished like a 3000 cycle infinite base type thing on normal settings, and while I was doing that I'd been watching some videos by Francis John and Echo Ridge Gaming where they were doing this hard mode, all the hardest settings on the hardest planet start, and going for all the achievements. So if we look here, they're basically trying to do all the achievements in one single run. And as they've pointed out, the hard three that you really got to worry about is Carnivore, Locavore, and Super Sustainable. Or Carnivore is, well, it says before the 100th cycle you have to eat 400,000 kcal of critter meat. This is actually false. It's before the end of the 100th cycle. So that threw me off a bit. I actually thought I was going to fail this run until I realized that no, it truly is the 100th cycle by the end of it. This is the hard one. This is the one I think that causes people the most problems. There's only like 1.4% of players have this achievement on Steam. Locavore is difficult, but it's not that hard. You have to consume 400,000 kcal of food without planting any seeds in planter boxes, farm tiles, or hydroponic farms. So there's no farming that you can do for food. Lastly is Super Sustainable, which locks you out from using natural gas, petroleum, wood, or coal. So you're pretty limited in the early game for any power other than the generator wheel and hydrogen generators. So these three were the tough ones, and I took a couple attempts at it. A couple things. I had read online for Carnivore, there's a way that you can go and hunt down the whatever those creatures are that give 16,000 meat that hang up, up in the upper levels of the map, right? Like they'll be all hiding up in here, and you can kill them and manage to squeak it out. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it the proper way with a setup. Now, a couple things. When Echo Ridge Gaming did it, he was doing the hatch method, but he had the good fortune of getting 3 hatch eggs quite early on in his run. So that gives an incredible boost if you manage to get hatches or 3 eggs early on, because it accelerates the time it takes to grow that. With Francis John, he went over into the other world and he found Pacus, so he was able to get some Pacus online, which also added to it. My concept was, though, that I wanted to be able to do it in a case where I didn't get any eggs early and I didn't go off to the other world and farm hatches. I wanted to do it all within one single map to achieve it, so it was quite difficult. The first thing is it required really, really concise play from the beginning. So like day one had the beds, the initial bathrooms were here, and the research and a manual generator was all set up by before the end of day. As well as though I scheduled the digger construction guy to his schedule, so he actually stayed up longer the first day and got everything done. So that was the beginning, and by day 3, I took the next dupe. I knew early on I was going to need at least 6 to start out, because getting rid of the Locavore achievement is to me was the most problematic to be able to get back on the plants. So also oxygen was going to be a huge problem. Now this map, there was enough, and here's the seed in case anybody ever wants to try this map. It actually was quite good because it had quite a lot of excellent plants. So I was able to basically keep my food online from the mealwood, the natural growing mealwood, and the excellent till almost about cycle 15, where that's when I really was going to have to bear down and start coming up with solutions for food. And the other problem is the oxygen. Well, the oxygen is going to run out around cycle 15. It was getting dicey, so I knew when I started that I had to get a oxygen and power system in place, so we weren't operating on a wheel. So that's where I came up with this system. This is based on actually one of Francis John's videos where he had this setup going. This is like an open-ended half Rodriguez. The idea here is that we're using the hydrogen obviously to power the basic stuff required for oxygen generation. So on the one loop, we've got this generator, which is pretty much constantly in use and hooked up to a smart battery, right? That powers the pump, the two electrolyzers, as well as the liquid pump. Okay, so that's off that. And all the excess, as you can see in the piping, any excess then is dumped into the other two, and that is going to another battery. This generator is here as additional. It wasn't used very much, honestly. For a lot of cycles, I didn't have it there and was able to just run everything off of this setup. The hardest part was getting this all built by cycle 15, primed and operating, and it barely kicked in. I was down to like 200 gas pressure. There was carbon dioxide everywhere. Things were just a mess, but they managed to squeak it out and get it active in time. Very slowly started to pressurize down, and I ran it with this one feature. You've got to keep this thing going, and if you just pressurize the oxygen and then and these get over pressurized and you kind of tame it down, then the problem is it's not active enough, make enough hydrogen to keep power going. So that's where this system over here, I have this set, I varied it, but it's set to 2500. If it gets above, then it opens these doors, and these doors open the space. It sucks off enough oxygen that the system kicks back in. So that's just a huge part of it in the open end. By doing this, I don't need pumps to pump oxygen into my base. It just falls in. That is the way I squeak enough power out to run the base. Again, this was active cycle 15, and that's imperative because you'll run out of oxygen. There's no algae on this map. There's a couple wild oxiferns were going, but you'll run out of oxygen, right? So once that kicked in, I had a little bit of breathing room, but I also knew that hatch system had to come online where I was starting to incubate the first egg by cycle 25. I did the math, and I knew that it was going to be very tight if I didn't get that happening. So basically around cycle 25, there was one hatch, the one that you start with on the map, and he had already popped an egg, and that went into my very first incubator. And of course then these 3 farms were hatch farms, and it started to cascade out. I just kept adding more incubators as I went along. Around cycle 40, and then for food, it was mush bars. I actually had two microbe mushers here. I was cranking up mush bars and cooking them into mush fry, and that's all they were eating. And the cook was operating full time with the one other guy was assisting as much as possible. And Rancher got started. About the starting dupes too. Yes, I took Quick Learner Researcher with Science 9. That was my first guy. Has to be done in order to get the research done fast enough. Second guy was a digger, pure digger. I think he had digging 10. And the last one was a rancher. I didn't take critter ranching 1. It's not necessary to have that added in, but it was a rancher, and I think he had 10 ranching skill to start. So those are the 3 starting guys, and it's almost critical that you start with those 3. Beyond that, you just take the dupes as they come, pick the best ones, try not to get anything too negative. Anyway, so they were on the microbe bars. By cycle 40, though, Locavore was achieved. So prior to that, I built planter boxes. I calculated how many I was going to need for the number of dupes I had. Obviously, I didn't need this many at that time. And we were on to mealwood. As soon as Locavore kicked in, started planting all the plants. And then mush bars stopped, mush fries stopped, and all they were eating was lice, meal lice. I was not making it into lice loaf or anything like that. Water was a huge concern. Initially, this is where some water was that I started to use. Beyond that, there had been some polluted water down here and other water, and I just sieved that and kept on cycling water. And eventually, though, I knew that wasn't sustainable. So along the way, I have this lovely cool salt slush geyser, which I was using to desalinate through the system. And note that this desalinator is on the same grid as the prime one. So there's enough power that it works, that it can keep all this going. The pump, 2 electrolyzers, the gas pump, and a desalinator, all that can run off of the one single battery and the one hydrogen generator. So that was then where I was getting my water from. Of course, I would cycle it in through the whole system to warm up the water and cool down the system. As you can see, it's fairly stable because I don't have access to gold amalgam or steel or anything like that. So I had to use the aluminum. So I had to be sure nothing was ever going to overheat up here. But it worked out pretty good. Anyway, so we went on meal lice until basically the hatch system kicked in, and it got more and more full, more complex. It was all normal hatchlings, sage hatchlings, stone hatchlings. I didn't divide them up. I threw them wherever they had to go and kept balancing the food, and just started cranking eggs. Now, the problem is that in order, I knew mathematically by cycle 70, I was going to have to start eating meat. So that meant that all 3 ranches had to be full. So I needed 24 hatchlings by cycle 70. And then the eggs started popping out and the meat started popping out. We started cooking barbecue. The way I had set this up basically was to have these triggers so that any time that an egg needed to be lullabied, I would micro it and click on the trigger. They would run over, hug it, and then I would just go back and click it off. And I'm doing this because power is a premium here. I cannot afford to be wasting any power with this setup. So that was the solution to get by on just the power that I'm generating. Eventually I have 20 of these things going because I knew that it was really going to come down to the crunch. Okay, so how did it come down to the crunch? Well, ultimately on cycles 93, 96, and I believe on 99, I had to take the last few dupes. So I'd been operating 7 dupes most of the time. Then I slowly started adding more. But the last 10 cycles, I had 3 dupes, 90, 93, 96, on those cycles. And that was mathematically, I knew enough that they would be able to eat the food, because they can eat 2,000 kcals a day because of the ravenous setting. So I got up to 12 dupes by the end of it. Okay, now how close did it come? Well, this is the only piece of meat left. We're on cycle 100. This is the last one. That's 4,000 kcal, and that's all we got. You can see all I had was meal lice left. And we'll go and look at the achievement. Here we are. We just hit it, right? We just hit it on cycle 100, and I had 4,000 meat to spare. And if you look at our guys, they could have ate maybe a little bit more if it was available, but not too much. So it really came down to the wire on everything with this run. So, basically that's how I managed to achieve the carnivore aspect of it with the parameters I had set out that I wanted to do. I had to have 3 guys dedicated to ranching, just so that, and they're all on schedules. Like I have everybody's schedule is off from each other, with 2 people in each single bracket. And one of the reasons I did it this way was to make sure that the ranching was always available, but another one was to get by with just two washrooms. And I'm using the closed loop system, right? But I just didn't have the resources or time or space or anything to be thinking about building more bathrooms. So just by making their schedules, only 2 of them ever want to use it at the same time. So that worked out extremely well. The other consideration I had to make while I was doing all this was, well, I'm not stopping at cycle 100. This wasn't just to get the achievement. This was I'm going for all the achievements. And maybe I'll do other videos if I get some views on this or whatever. This is the first video I've made where I'm actually, commentating. But I know also that after 100, I'm going to have to continue. And I also knew that everything would be dead of the meat. It wasn't like the hatch farm was going to continue going. I had to eat all the other hatches from cycle 90 into 100. Basically, once I knew that they couldn't produce meat towards carnivore, I killed them. So they laid an egg at cycle 91. Well, at that point, they're not going to lay another egg for 6 cycles, and it takes 4 cycles for the egg to actually hatch, to become meat. So therefore, at that point, after cycle 91, as soon as they laid an egg, they were slaughtered. But I had to eat them all in order to have enough meat to do the achievement. So then, of course, this is where all this meal wood's come into place, because I've been setting up to continue, knowing that with 12 duplicants, with Ravenous, how many meal plants do you require in order to support that? Well, it turns out you need 120. So I've got like 126 planted here, ready to go. There's meal lice everywhere. So that as soon as the meat all vanish, now they're back onto the meal lice schedule until I can get something else up and running that's better than meal lice. But that's what they'll be getting for a while. Luckily, I have enough dirt, 341 tons of dirt, so that'll keep them going for a couple hundred cycles until I, get some good. I'm probably going to do pip farming. Hatches, I don't have the resources to feed large-scale hatches for ravenous. Pips are actually quite good for a meat source. Yes, you do need a lot of ranches for them, but with a single arbor tree being felled, polluted water, a single arbor tree can keep 8 of them going. So I have to do the math on it, but I'll probably set up a whole bunch of pip farms and slowly switch over to that. One of the reasons I do that is because that's infinite meat. The pips, all you need is polluted water, and that's quite readily available. So anyways, that's my video. If you like it, I hope so. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe, or share it out, comment, whatever. I might do some more videos on some various systems I've come up with, and maybe I'll update the space and how things are going with my all achievement hard run once I've played it a little bit more. Thanks for watching.